Welcome to the NBA DFS Build, a show dedicated to breaking down each DraftKings slate to help you build the best lineups possible. I am Kevin Roberts, joined by Taylor Smith. We will be going game by game, highlighting the top plays for the night for the 9-game slate on Friday, February 2nd. Do us a favor and like the video below if you can, if we help you in any way. And if you want to see more of these videos, please subscribe to our channel, the DFS Build, so you get alerted for future episodes. You can also find us on Spotify, and that link can be found on our YouTube page. This video is sponsored by DFS Hero, which has a versatile lineup optimizer and plenty of features that can help you score a GPP takedown. Right now, you can get 15% off when you sign up using our link, which is located in the video description below. All right, we got a big 9-game slate, though, so let's jump right into it right away. A hefty 12-point spread with the Pistons as home dogs with a 238.5 total. I'd imagine we want to stay away with this game with so many games on the docket. But starting with the Clipper side, Taylor, is there anybody that you like?
Well, Kawhi and Harden are both 8-8. They don't look bad. Great spot, of course. The Pistons are quite bad defensively. But George, I think, is off the injury report and expected to play. So not dying to get there. George himself being limited doesn't look that good. So yeah, not really anything on the LA side.
Yep, I'm in agreement. Worth noting that Harden and Leonard have 24 plus boom ratings here, so the system at DFS Hero does like them. And like you mentioned, it's only natural since the Pistons are garbage. All right, on the other side, I would imagine due to the spread and not a great matchup that we're not super interested in Pistons. Cade Cunningham is back. He's healthy. He's probable to play. So it looks like they're at full strength here. If the game stays close, do you like any Pistons?
If it's close, maybe not. But if there's a blowout, I don't think like a dart throw with Asar Thompson's a bad idea. 3-7 is cheap. He's been good per minute. The issue is, of course, they have a pretty crowded rotation, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. Isaiah Stewart being out maybe gives him a few more minutes potentially, and Mike Muscala also. Mike Muscala started the last game, which is really wild and worth noting. I suppose Gallinari could start, and he's 3-3, but he has no minutes upside since he's 70 years old. So maybe a dusting of a star, but otherwise no for me.
Yeah, I will just mention, I don't really expect this game to stay close, but if you think it will, Cade Cunningham is a little bit cheap at 8K. He played 35 and 31 minutes in his last 2 games. So assuming he isn't limited, he is not the worst GPP play on this slate. Overall, I'm probably just going to be fading this game entirely. Next up, we have Miami visiting the Wizards in DC. The Wizards are 8-point home dogs. The total is 228. Miami is coming in at full strength, I believe. Let me just double check that for you. Duncan Robinson is out. Nobody cares about that. So they obviously have Terry Rozier in the rotation now. And everybody just kind of eats into each other. But they're all good prices, and the matchup is sublime. So who stands out for Miami for you?
I think Butler came up from where he was the other day, but still 78 is perhaps a little light. He's been playing quite well, and I don't think the Wizards are going to really slow him down. You can say the same for Bam, just because the Wizards are like the worst rebounding team of all time. So there's certainly a path to Bam, even though he's been pretty weak since Rozier got there. Hero at 6'7", I don't think is the worst kind of mid-range dart throw. Just because the matchup's so good. I have minor interest in all of them. None of them shapes up to be a core play, though.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about Butler last time, and I think he was the guy we liked the most. He ended up smashing. He had 51 fantasy points. Bam just is not the same dude right now. He projects the best of anybody, has the best boom rating for the Heat, and he's a good price. And the matchup's awesome, but he just hasn't been that dude. It is the Wizards, though, that they're facing, so you absolutely can play any Miami guy that you feel good about. I agree. Nobody stands out as a big priority. Actually, we're still on this game. Okay, over to the Wizards side. If this game can stay close, it's a tough matchup for the Wiz, and normally we don't like Washington players anyways, but is there anybody that you do like?
I get it with Kuz just because he's cheap, but I think Butler is just a better option in the same range. Kispert, as always, looks like a fade and is 20 minutes off the bench. So all things considered, this looks like an easy avoid.
Yeah, probably true. I will note that Marvin Bagley is out, so maybe you get more minutes for Daniel Gafford. But as we say every time, Bam Bam is not an easy draw down low. So nobody looks good for me here. Kuz is a good price, but the matchup's terrible. And like you said, if you're going there, why not just go with Jimmy, because he's not going to be owned either, right? So moving on, we got the Suns against the Hawks. This is probably the best game environment of the entire slate. Could make it a little bit chalky, but for a 9-game slate, don't think we really care that much about that. It has a massive 249.5 total, and the Hawks are 3.5-point dogs at home. So close game, lots of points. Who do you like on the Sun side?
Yeah, it actually doesn't look that popular. Beal is coming in with some ownership for 6.5. I understand that fully. He hasn't really shown a ceiling, but every now and then he has had decent games as the third option here. So I get why he's popular. Durant for 9.2 is still too cheap. The matchup is about as good as it gets. I don't see anyone on Atlanta slowing him down. And Booker for 9.9, you can make the same case for. If one of these guys does wind up becoming more popular between KD and Booker, I'm happy to just get to the other one. But at pretty even ownership, I'm happy to side with just the cheaper Durant.
Yeah, that's pretty sound logic there. Worth noting, Booker is probably going to be lower owned because of the price discrepancy. He does have a higher boom rating, and he does average 2 more or 0.2 more fantasy points per minute. So he feels to me like the better play in a vacuum. But if you're looking purely at value, KD does stand out. Yeah, Beal is shaping up to be chalk, and it's hard to fight it at 6.5K in this matchup because the Hawks just let anybody do whatever they want. But he is still the third guy here. So matchup be damned. If Beal's going to come in at crazy chalk on a 9-game slate, I think I might actually get away from this. He's still a very good play with a high ceiling here. But as you noted, in general, the ceiling has not been there. So I think he might be a fade for me. Moving to the other side, we got the Hawks. Not the best matchup against the Suns, who've been playing pretty well, but this game could be fast-paced and a lot of points could be here. So we should have some interest in Atlanta. Who do you like?
I really don't have a lot of interest in anyone here. Capella's cheap, I get it, but minutes are really wonky with him. Trae Young is good, high floor, high ceiling, but there are quite a few ways to spend money on the slate, and I don't really think Trae Young is the best way to do so. I prefer the Phoenix guys on the other side. I think everyone will, but not enough of a pivot to get me on Young, really. I don't think that's the best option to pay up on the slate. So even though it's a good spot, I'm not really seeing much of Atlanta popping tonight.
No, you're probably right. I think it's more of like a run back thing if you're going to be stacking this game for some reason. Trae Young does stand out a little bit as an individual play that's not going to be owned. He's going with almost 50 fantasy points for his projection, 22% boom rating. It's not a terrible matchup for him by the numbers. So he's not going to be owned, and there's a lot of guys up in that price range that will be owned. So he's at least worth putting in your player pool and considering him. Moving along, we got the Kings and the Pacers in Indiana. Oh, by the way, just to keep in mind for the Hawks, DeAndre Hunter is questionable. I don't think that really changes that much for me, but it's worth noting just for maybe a little bit extra value there. So for the Kings, everybody is at full strength. On the Indiana side, Tyrese Halliburton is questionable. He's been limited, so I don't think he's really on the table either way. But if he is out, that obviously opens things up considerably. Miles Turner is questionable. And then they also have Benedict Mathurin and Jalen Smith questionable. So honestly, the Pacers could offer a lot of value here. And the game does have a really nice 248.5 total with a 3-point spread. Kings favored on the road. So starting with the Sacramento side, who stands out?
Herter looks the best. He's 5'1". He's going to be popular, I think. But
Those last words right there. Herter looks the best.
He does, I think. Sabonis is good matchup. Revenge, if you're into that. Indiana gets crushed by bigs in the paint, but Sabonis is pricey. I think a center has a lot of good options tonight. If I'm spending up, I think SGA is someone that I plan to prioritize. So Sabonis kind of at least falls into second place by default there. Harrison Barnes, if he's going to be owned, not into that. Keegan Murray's not a bad flyer, just because the pace of the game's good. Minutes are pretty safe with him. And he has some upside on occasion. So it's really just those four, I think, with Herter being the standout, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kid about Herter just because he is a volatile player in general, but he looks good. It's a good price. We'll probably have enough value to the point where you don't feel forced to play Herter, but he actually is a DFS hero core play at the moment. And he, projects just okay, but he is cheap. The matchup is awesome. He did put up 46 fantasy points the last time he faced the Pacers, 31 real points. Keep in mind, this is the 28th ranked team as far as 3-point makes allowed per game. So Keegan Murray, like you said, he also looks good. Both these guys from the outside. And like you said, Sabonis is an absolute smash play against the dead last interior defense in the NBA. So, I mean, Kings across the board. I mean, it's kind of weird how it's such a good spot, and De'Aaron Fox is just kind of like floating under the radar. Just like we never want to play De'Aaron Fox. I don't know why. He's always pretty good. So yeah, Sabonis, Fox, Murray, Herter probably is it for me too, but they all look very, very alluring here. On the other side are the Pacers. It's a tight spread, awesome total. So we might have a little bit of interest here depending on the injury news. Starting up top, the best projected player is Siakam. Who do you like here?
It is all dependent on the news with 4 of them questionable.
Yeah.
Like Turner being out clears Jalen Smith, but if Jalen Smith's also out, then it's Isaiah Jackson time. Andrew Nembhard is the beneficiary if Halliburton's out, maybe a sprinkling of TJ McConnell as well. And Siakam should see more usage in playmaking if Halliburton and or Turner's out. Neesmith has been playing a ton of minutes with Mathurin out the last couple games. You can make a case for Buddy Hield in the same situation. As of now, nothing looks good, but there's a decent chance we get some value here, just depending on the news.
Yeah, I'm almost kind of hopeful that Turner and Miles or Hallie just end up playing, so I don't have to worry with Pacers. I mean, they will be good plays if those guys are out, but they often just kind of eat into each other. It's very difficult to assess who's going to be the priority play for them. But if those guys are out, the guy who stands out for me the most is Naismith. He's been doing really well, and his usage will just be sky high. And he'll mostly just be behind Siakam in terms of usage, I would say. So he's definitely on the table, but this is just a situation that you're just going to have to keep an eye on. Moving along, we got the Raptors and the Rockets in Houston. The Raptors are 4.5-point road dogs, as expected. 231.5 totals, actually pretty good considering the way Houston plays. That might have to do with Toronto's sagging defense over the last few weeks. So starting on the Toronto side, who stands out for you?
Jonte Porter's out and Pirtle's questionable. It could be Thad Young night again. He's 4-5. He's center only, but he got 31 or 32 minutes in the last game. So there's a path. It's not a fun path, but there's a path with him. Barrett and Quickly questionable. We kind of have to wait on that too. Guys like Schroeder and Brown and Gary Trent would look better if they sit. Scotty Barnes looks fine either way, not getting any ownership at all. I imagine it'll come up if like Barrett and or Quickly are out, but not a bad kind of flyer if those guys are back. If they play, I guess Barrett is in play, but not super psyched about any of that.
Yeah, if they're back, I don't like Scotty Barnes at all because all these other playmakers on the court kind of cut into his usage a little bit. He obviously is a guy who can do everything at a high level, but if you got Barrett, Quickly, Schroeder, Trent all taking shots and trying to make plays and stuff, it just lowers his ceiling for me. But in a vacuum, unknown Scotty Barnes is pretty interesting. The guy that really stands out, you already said Thad. If Pirtle's out, loves that at 4.5. Hey, if we're going to play freaking Jackson Hayes, we can play Thaddeus Young, right? Put some respect on that guy's name.
Played Rashawn Holmes the other day.
I know. So, yeah, so did I. I split that ownership between Rashawn Holmes and Peyton Watson. So it doesn't ever feel good clicking Thad Young's name, but he is a decent price. He provides some value on this slate. We just need Pirtle to miss to do it. All right, on the other side, you have Houston. You have Houston, and Şengün is questionable. Kind of hoping Şengün ends up sitting out this one because it opens up monster usage for Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, and actually even Jabari Smith. So starting with Şengün, how are you feeling about the Rockets here?
Yeah, I think he's dealing with an illness. So if he plays, I imagine he will be fine to play full minutes. He looks good. Toronto doesn't protect the paint anymore with, I guess if Pirtle's back, they look a little better. But if he's out, then it's just Thad Young and Şengün, and I don't think Thad Young really has much of a hope there. Van Vliet is underpriced. I think this is like the cheapest he's been all year. Revenge game for him tonight. Should see plenty of usage either way. Will look better if Şengün is out, of course, but even with Şengün in, he might be the most popular player on the whole slate. Jalen Green's just going off lately. I think Green is a really good pivot from Van Vliet that should be lower owned if Şengün is in. Jabari, fine. Minutes are usually there for him. Dylan Brooks may not be the worst kind of cheap flyer. If Şengün's out, I don't really know what to think. I don't have a lot of faith in Jock Landale, but he is 3K. If he starts, I suppose he's in play, but they could easily just go small. With Toronto lacking size, they could play Jeff Green. They could play Jae'Sean Tate, Cam Whitmore. There are a lot of ways to go. I don't think Landale is even a safe value if he starts.
No, I don't really think Jeff Green is either. I mean, at 3.2K, if he starts, he could get 30-plus minutes. But boy, oh boy, he does not do a lot when he's out there, and he's ancient. So in theory, Jeff Green would be playable if Şengün is out and Jeff Green starts, but I wouldn't personally like it that much. Since he's sick, I might not prioritize Şengün if he's in. But if he's out, FVV, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, those three look very, very good. And like you said, Green is a nice pivot off of Fred VanVleet. He's a very nice pivot off of Brad Beal. He's getting half the ownership that both these guys are. So you could pair any two of these three guys and just have Green part of it, and you're fading one of the chalky guys. I guess it's just about getting it right. But we got to monitor the status of Şengün before we can make any decision there. Moving on, we have the Warriors and the Grizzlies going down in Memphis, 224.5 total, and the Warriors are 8.5-point favorites. Worth noting that the Skeleton Crew Grizzlies have been very competitive. Their head coach gets them up to play every time out. They're a bit slower. They play defense. So I don't even know if I agree with this spread right now. It's not like the Warriors have been immune to inferior teams. They literally lost this Grizzlies team like a week or two ago. So let's see. Check real quick the status of some of these injuries. They do have some health woes. Obviously, the big guys are still out. Ja is out for the year. Desmond Bane's out. Marcus Smart is out. Derrick Rose is doubtful. Zaire Williams is out. Luke Kennard may come back. He's questionable. And Xavier Tillman was downgraded to doubtful. So that could be it. That's all worth monitoring. But let's start with the Warriors side. Who do you like for Golden State?
Pretty much everyone. Kuminga is going to be popular too. He's just still too cheap for the role he's playing. Kind of breaking out lately for them, especially in the scoring department. He looks great. You can say the same for Draymond at 6'3", starting at center. Fine spot against Memphis. They don't have a lot of size these days, so I don't think Draymond will get into foul trouble or played off the court or anything like that. So I'm happy to get to him. Sub 6K Klay Thompson's fine. He should be back here after missing the last game with an illness, but minutes should be back to normal. Memphis defense is not very imposing these days. Curry, I guess you can say, is a pivot from those kind of expensive guards, but not super into that. And Wiggins has been playing a lot of minutes lately. He benefited in the last game from Klay being out, so it feels like a bit of a chase. But for 5-6, I don't think it's the worst kind of tournament play.
Yeah, I do think Klay being out last game affects some of these guys and the way we will be looking at them. I agree. For the first time in a while, I'm also not really on Curry here. It just doesn't feel like a priority. Honestly, the only two guys that stand out to me are Kuminga and Draymond Green, although Draymond Green is susceptible to nut shots out of nowhere and getting, tossed. So you just never know with him. Kuminga is the guy for me. I mean, I don't care if he's chalky. He's been awesome. 7 straight games of 34-plus fantasy points. He's been money. They're ramping up his minutes. They are clearly invested in making him a key part of the starting rotation. So, he's my guy here. I think the other guys are fine, but he's probably the only one I'm really looking at. Going over to the Memphis side, the Luke Kennard news is pretty large. If he's back in, he looks okay. And then Scottie Pippen Jr. would be kind of not very playable. Same with maybe John Conchar. But if Kennard is out, I like Pippen and Conchar. Who do you like for Memphis?
Yeah, it might also depend on Rose, who's questionable. Don't think he would play a lot, but he could steal minutes from someone in the backcourt if he's in. The most appealing guy is Aldama, I think. He's been playing plenty of minutes. Tillman being doubtful means he's going to play a ton again, I would think. He looks pretty good as the pivot. Like if you don't want to play Draymond and Kuminga together, I think going to Aldama in place of one of them is good. Jaren Jackson, Vince Williams, completely fine. Jackson, I think, is pretty interesting as a kind of lower owned 8K-ish play. Like if you're looking to get off of Şengün, if he's popular, I think Jackson's a fine alternative. Yeah, like I said, Vince Williams plays plenty of minutes. Decent role for him. Not really wanting to pay 6K for Luke Kennard, even if he's in. I think that's too much for him. So it's really just those three. And if news breaks, I guess Pippen is playable.
Yeah, I'm hoping Kennard is out, and I didn't really even factor in the potential return of the geriatric Derrick Rose. But yeah, I guess if he's in, he could eat a couple minutes. But hoping he's out too. Pippen looks really good at 4.9K. Conchar at 5K looks pretty good too. Yeah, Aldama, I'm with you. 5.8 his minutes are massive, and it looks like Xavier Tillman's not going to play, so I don't see him coming off the court very much. Those are the guys I'd prioritize, but obviously if Kennard comes back, that changes. All right, moving on, we got the Magic and Timberwolves. This is a defensive battle with a disgusting 2-11.5 total. Gross. Timberwolves are 7.5-point home favorites. They are the considerably better team, but Orlando can be rather pesky. I don't see anybody here for the Magic that stands out. They don't project very well at all. Do you disagree?
I do not.
Okay, let's move along. I don't really see anybody worth messing with. I mean, Wendell Carter's price is nice, but the matchup's horrible. That's about it for me.
Yeah, no interest for me.
All right, so it's not a good matchup for Minnesota either. I mean, Orlando is a pretty good defensive team. Rudy Gobert is questionable. That's worth noting because Naz Reid could be an interesting value. So who else do you like here for the Minnesota Timberwolves?
I think Gobert, if he's in, looks pretty good. 7K. Pretty high floor with him, kind of a sneaky ceiling. No one really plays Gobert with his limited usage, but I don't think it's a bad spot. I think Naz is playable either way, just because he's cheap and really good per minute. We've seen a ceiling off the bench for him on occasion. I don't think that's the worst punt if Gobert's in. If he's out, he'll be maybe the most popular play on the slate. Anthony Edwards, fine, another kind of alternative to the 8K more popular plays. I don't think he's bad. Karl Anthony Towns, maybe. I just think Wemby is a better play at the same position, so I'm happy to find the extra money for Wemby instead.
Yeah, man. Like always, Ant and Cat, they look fine. There's nothing wrong with them at all. They're good prices and they project okay. But yeah, the only guy I'd really look for is Naz Reid if Rudy is out. I'm not super interested in this game at all, but I mean, would you agree that if Rudy's out and even if Naz doesn't start, we can say goodbye to Thad and just go with Reid here?
Yeah, well, I think both are in play. I don't think you have to fade Thad fully.
Well, I mean, okay,
yeah,
if you're
Naz will be way better, of course.
If you're building one lineup, we would go Naz over Thad.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right, moving on here, we got Hornets and Thunder. In theory, a fun game, but not really because it's a 16-point spread. The Hornets are massive road underdogs. It does have a 225 total, and on the flip side for OKC, this is a awesome matchup. And, you know, there's some guys do stand out with LaMelo Ball still out. So starting with the Charlotte side, do you like anybody?
Not really. Cody Martin, I guess. Ugh, don't want to do that. Nick Richards gets plenty of minutes. He's cheap, but I hope we have better cheaps on this slate. Richards gets the minutes. OKC is not a good rebounding team, so I don't think it's a bad spot for him. Miller and Bridges are priced up, but there is usage to be had without LaMelo. It's just a matter of keeping it close, and I'm very dubious of their chances of doing that.
Yeah, worth noting that the Lakers were 15 or 16-point dogs yesterday, went into Boston and beat the Celtics. But yeah, typically when you see a spread like this, it's a sign that you should be running for the hills. I will say Miles Bridges does shape up as a pretty interesting GPP play. He got almost 70 fantasy points in his last game without LaMelo, who is doubtful. I'm assuming he's just not going to play. Bridges is going to soak up a crap ton of usage here in at least 3 quarters. So the ceiling is significant. He does have a 20% boom rating. For me personally, I'm avoiding the Charlotte side. I mean, these guys in a vacuum are good plays based off of price and roles right now. But OKC is not a good matchup, and the spread is very scary to me. So especially on a 9-game slate, I don't see the point in messing with that. Flipping over to the OKC side, SGA projects as the best play of the entire slate. as far as raw point projection goes. He also has a 34.8% boom rating at DFS Hero, and the matchup is amazing for everyone involved. Who do you like for OKC?
Yeah, so Jalen Williams being out means that some Miranda is going to start and may not start the second half. It was Kenrich Williams the other day. I think Aaron Wiggins started the second half over him. I guess Kenrich is playable if he starts again, but you cannot have much faith in him. Lou Dort is probably the guy I'm getting to most of anyone on the slate right now for 3.9. He's Lou Dort, but he played 36 minutes in the last game. And Charlotte, of course, is dead last in defensive ratings, so not a bad place to buy low on a chalky Lou Dort. I guess if you're going to play him, you want to play him against the Hornets. Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams that's actually playing, is 3K. He's probably not going to play more than 20 minutes, but in a blowout, he would theoretically get more. If you want to punt with the 3K center, I don't think he's unplayable. But otherwise, it's really just SGA. I don't really have a lot of interest in Chet or Giddey in this spot.
Well, I don't want to play Giddey because his minutes are all over the place. I'll play Chet at 7.6, 100%. Nice ceiling. Matchup isn't, or the projection isn't really that great, but it's the Hornets. So if nobody's going to be on Chet, he is a little bit interesting at that price. But yeah, SGA is a very, very tough fade, even with the likely blowout here. He could easily get you 60 3/4.
I wanted to shout out PJ Washington real quick. 35 minutes in 3 games in a row. He's under 6K. Like I said, OKC doesn't really rebound that well. So in tournaments, I think he's pretty good as a completely unowned mid-range play.
Yeah, and he 3 games ago, he had 56 fantasy points with 43 real points. We totally expect that to happen again. But yeah, and by the way, I am 100% with you, and it feels really safe and good that I like Lou Dort. I believe he's a core play. Let me double check. He absolutely is. He has he's in the optimal 33% of the time. He has an 18% boom rating. He is projecting for hefty ownership, and obviously the blowout risk is there. So that could be enough for you to get off of a chalky Dort, but at 3.9, it's kind of hard to get off of him for me. All right, last game of the night here. We got the Pelicans and the Spurs. The other island game is not part of this main slate. The Pelicans are 8-point favorites in San Antonio with a nice 233.5 total. This is a very interesting game if it can stay close. Zion Williamson is questionable. Herbert Jones is questionable, and Larry Nance is questionable. So any of those guys being out would open things up greatly for the Pels. And obviously, if they're in, I'm not super interested across the board. How are you feeling about the Pels here?
Yeah, I think they're good either way, just because it's San Antonio and they're not stopping anyone. We saw Daniel start the last game and Murphy with Herb and Zion out. I assume we get the same thing tonight. Jordan Hawkins maybe gets a bump off the bench, but the usage really goes through CJ and Brandon Ingram. I think both are still playable either way because they're under 8K and the minutes should be there. Zion himself, if he's in, 7'3", happy to get to that. San Antonio doesn't have a lot of size other than Wemby, so I think Zion can potentially do some damage inside in this spot. Yeah, this is kind of another wait-and-see team, but I think they're really interesting either way.
Worth noting, Zion hasn't had the best games against Wemby and the Spurs. 2 games, 32 fantasy points per game, only 13.5 real points per game average in this matchup. So I don't know how interested I am in him just because he has not exhibited much of a ceiling on the year. I think CJ and Ingram look really good if he's out, and they look totally fine if he's in. Worth noting that Ingram and JV both have the biggest usage spike with Larry Nance and Zion off the floor, and Najee and Trey Murphy also see a nice production spike with those guys gone. So there's a lot to like here if a bunch of these Pels guys are out. I'm with you just because of the matchup and the cheap prices that everybody's still in play. They have to be in your player pool, but I'm going out of my way to prioritize them if these guys are actually out. Last team of the night here, Spurs, big underdogs at home. The Pels aren't exactly the best matchup. But boy, oh boy, you got Wemby here. It's still only 9.3. He should be way more expensive. He looks like, to me, the best play of the slate beyond SGA, maybe even above SGA. How are you feeling about the Spurs?
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff looks pretty good. Wemby, obviously. Keldon Johnson not expected to play, so there will be more usage for Devin Vassell. Chetty Osman played 28 minutes in the last game. I think you can't reasonably expect that, but obviously it's within his range of outcomes. He's 3.5. Don't think he's a bad value, but I'm a bit concerned that he could be popular. And if Chetty Osman is owned by like a quarter or half the field, I do not want to play him. So keep an eye on that. Trey Jones for 5.5 is too cheap. Starting big minutes at point guard for him. Sohan maybe under 6K, not the worst as a pivot away from those Warriors we talked about. So yeah, there's kind of a lot to like on San Antonio, which is not always the case.
No, yeah, I don't know if you know, and I missed it if you said it. Keldon Johnson, it seems like he's closer to doubtful, and Zach Collins.
Yeah, I said he's not expected to play.
Okay, yeah. So
thanks for listening, Kevin.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I was just looking at the projections here, but yeah, I agree with the whole Chetty Osman thing. 27% ownership here on DFS Hero. That's gross. I don't want anything to do with that, just because you never know what they're going to do with the rotation. For me, for the most part, it's just going to be Wemby, but I see the merit in looking at some other Spurs here. All right, real quick overall before we wrap this up, let's look at the chalkiest guys here. Right now, it looks like it's going to be Fred VanVleet, which I get. He's only 6.9K, and below him, SGA, he looks like the top spend of the slate. Looking at the chalky guys here, who is the one piece of – I think you kind of just said Chetty is. But maybe, okay, maybe beyond Chetty, who's a piece of chalk here that you don't like?
Bradley Beal, perhaps. I think there are enough alternatives. Like we said, Jalen Green right there. Klay Thompson is another one that I have my eye on. Devin Vassell looks great as an alternative to chalky Bradley Beal. We've seen Beal, finish with sub 30 fantasy points often as the third banana here. So just because they're playing Atlanta doesn't mean he's a lock to suddenly go off. With so many options out there on a 9-gamer, I think fading him is certainly in play.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly my thought process with Beal. The matchup is awesome, but who has he been? He's shown us the guy he is in this offense, and he's just – I mean, he can go off. He can, but that's just not what he's been doing. So are you eating the FVV chalk, or is he somebody you might consider fading?
As of now, yeah, I'm playing him and Şengün quite a bit.
Okay, all right. As far as boom rating, the best place to slate, SGA is at the top. Are you paying for SGA today?
Certainly am, and Wemby. Devin Booker being pretty high there is interesting. I don't think he's going to be popular at all. And obviously Atlanta is probably the best matchup that's not Charlotte on the slate. So if Booker is going to be an unpopular spend, I think he's pretty intriguing.
I am right there with you. I like both Suns guys as kind of sub 10% owned guys here.
Plus you're getting leverage off Beal if you play one of those and not Beal.
Yeah, I mean, I love SGA as one of the top spends, but also, by the way, Sabonis is not generating much ownership and is quite the pivot off of SGA price-wise. But, yeah, going from SGA to Devin Booker, you're not losing a lot in projection, but you're losing a lot in ownership. Devin Booker is like top 5 here in boom rating. So, and he's got, one of the best matchups of the slate, one of the top 2 matchups. So, yeah, I really like Devin Booker a lot. We'll just have to see what other news comes out and how the projections get changed. But that's going to do it for us. Hopefully we helped you out with our process. If we do, please like this video and be sure to subscribe to the DFS Build channel so you can catch future videos when they come out. Thanks for checking us out here, and we wish you luck.